Hi, I am Umaru Sanda. I'm the host of Eyewitness News on 97.3 Citi FM. Every weeknight, do join me for the big stories of the day as we do the analysis, the interviews, the probing questions. This is Point Blank on Eyewitness News. I am Umaru Sanda Amadou. Tonight on Point Blank, the NDC Member of Parliament for Bolgatanga Central, Honorable Isaac Adongo, is my guest. He has written a letter to the Bank of Ghana, the Central Bank Governor, making some specific demands and some claims. He says that the BOG is not helping in clearing the minds of people as far as the banking sector is concerned. He thinks that many people are not satisfied with the turn of events and the BOG ought to act. What action does he want? Honorable Isaac Adongo, you're welcome to Point Blank.
Thank you, and good evening to you and your listeners.
Good evening. So you wrote a letter to the BOG when?
I did that last week. I posted it via FedEx on Thursday last week. So I expect that, well, Friday was a holiday, so they probably would have come to work on Monday to meet it.
I see. And you are saying that what?
Well, I'm raising very serious concerns in the banking sector. And we all know that the banking sector is a catalyst for development, and it's a major vehicle through which we can actually grow or bust. And so when there are systemic risk, and by systemic we are looking at risk that is across the industry and which can create problems for the players in the industry and need to be looked at quite closely. And in this industry, information flow in terms of what you disclose to the public, in terms of how you disclose it, and in terms of even the timing of those disclosures are very, very key in assuring the public and stakeholders about the situation on the ground. And I feel that there are some gaps that have to be addressed. So
specifically, what is your concern?
Well, specifically what the first one is the fact that there's a law that mandates our banks to publish their audited financial statement 3 months after the end of the year. And that is clearly captured in the Banking and the Special Deposit Act 930. In that act, specifically under Section 92, it makes it mandatory for them to file their returns. And so for the Ghana Commercial Bank, and don't forget, Ghana Commercial Bank is the biggest bank in Ghana.
GCB Bank
GCB Bank, is the biggest bank in Ghana. It recently was involved in 2 major transactions. One was UT Capital Bank that had to be resolved, and also UT Capital Bank, the 2 of them. And so there is Capital Bank. So there is this industry expectation to know what exactly is happening after it has taken over those difficult banks, and the information is not flowing. We recently had the bank coming out to say that they have been given approval by the Securities and Exchange Commission to do that by the end of May. My contention is that this is a listed company on the stock exchange market, and so you expect the regulator to be the one providing the assurance and not the one who is in breach of the law itself. The Bank of Ghana has also gone very quiet, and that is very worrying for industry.
But you see, you should be stepping on something before you're threatening to throw a stone. Are you having any indication, picking any information anywhere that things are not as good as they look from the outside, for which reason you want official information to come out?
Why is it taking 5 months or more to publish the end of year accounts?
Do you have cause to believe that there's something wrong somewhere?
As we speak today, GCB Bank used to be a major lender on the interbank market. In other words, GCB Bank had so much liquidity that when other banks are struggling to get money overnight to meet their obligations, they look to GCB to borrow. Today, GCB is a net borrower on the market. We are aware that GCB, after taking over UT and Capital Banks, have had to go to the Bank of Ghana asking for emergency liquidity support. That clearly puts GCB in a very vulnerable situation. And so when you have a major player in this situation, and yet the true picture is not clearly available to the people, the regulators have not come to assure us that nothing untoward is happening, We just are looking at making sure that we turn out an audited reports that meet the expectation of stakeholders and therefore calm the nerves on the market. In fact, one of the challenges the bank is facing today, immediately you fail to disclose, to meet your disclosure requirement, your risk profile immediately heightens, because then people are asking what is happening. And so Ghana, GCB Bank, don't forget, deals with international corresponding banks and partner banks in terms of dealing with their LCs and trade-related transactions. They are currently having challenges because these banks abroad are not too sure about the status of that bank. In fact, there are other banks on the market who are trying to engage in other transactions. We currently are talking about people coming in to buy banks. There are valuations of these banks. A few banks are listed on the stock exchange. GCB is one of them, and their peers use the financials and the data of these banks in order to do valuation of their stocks. They currently don't have a benchmark to be able to do that in GCB. So these are all creating some level of systemic fears within the market.
You see,
and
you repeatedly keep saying fears in the market space and in the public. What sampling have you done to come to the conclusion that there is some fear in the market?
When you have a net lender in the market suddenly become a net borrower, that message and information goes around the industry fairly quickly. It is one of the most efficient industry in terms of information flow, and players know the position of each and every one of them. In fact, GCB Bank, some time past, used to actually lend to Bank of Ghana on overnight basis. And so to find that bank in that situation is very, very worrying. And we are saying that it should have taken the regulator enough to disclose some information and to give assurance to the market. The Securities and Exchange Commission should have given assurances to the market, because the stock is still being traded on the stock exchange. And on what information are people buying and selling the stock? Clearly something is happening. They are not being protected. There are other issues. Agricultural Development Bank, okay, as we speak today, don't even have an approved board by the Bank of Ghana. And they have submitted their nominated members to the board for well over a year. And yet the Bank of Ghana is required within 3 months approve or disapprove the nomination. Why are we still having a bank dealing with third-party funds, dealing with depositors' money, and yet do not have the assured corporate governance structure that takes the right decisions in respect of your deposit? And so these are some of the challenges that I expect the Bank of Ghana to address. You'll recall recently that the Bank of Ghana, after they met the Council of State, came out with the Council of State urging that the banks that cannot meet the minimum capital requirements of 400 million must think about merger and acquisitions. Is that not it? Now, ask the Bank of Ghana, do they have any guidelines published to be able to ensure this kind of activity in the banking sector? And the answer is no. So even if banks want to merge today, they don't have guidance from the Bank of Ghana. And we're told 4 months ago by the governor that they will develop and publish those guidelines. Now, why I'm saying this is because only recently the governor said that by July, he will publish the list of banks that will not meet the minimum capital requirement. And yet a major window for these banks are mergers and acquisitions. And you don't even give them that opportunity to be able to merge or for others to acquire others. And so clearly you are asking to more or less disconnect these banks from the oxygen so they can die, and yet you haven't given them an opportunity. That opportunity would have been to publish guidelines of measures and acquisitions, so that those that feel they cannot raise the minimum capital will think about coming together and forming a bigger bank that will have the capital. Now, don't also forget that measures and acquisition will require a thorough job of due diligence on both sides or partners that are involved. It will take you a minimum of 1 year to do a proper merger and acquisition. So if you were to give that option, you would automatically have opened a window beyond December for these banks. Now you've closed that window. What is the intention? So you are creating systemic fears, because immediately you announce that, I can assure you, if I have my money sitting in one of those banks that I've enlisted, I would definitely move my money.
Is that why you said that you are saying that the posturing of the central bank in respect of Unibank and others had led to massive withdrawals of cheap deposits by customers? Is that why you're saying that?
Yes.
And you're saying in extension that this has led to very expensive emergency liquidity support.
Let me tell you, when these banks mobilize deposits, they are cheaper. There are people who have demand deposit at the bank that they don't even earn an interest on. So when you put fears in the people to withdraw those monies, and in return, when they need money, they have to come to Bank of Ghana, who will lend to them at an interest rate of 2% above the interbank rates. Now, they don't even qualify for interbank because no bank will lend to that bank because they know where they are. So they won't lend to that bank. So that bank clearly loses the cheap deposits that it had, which have been withdrawn. It loses the opportunity to access interbank lending from its peers, which are cheaper. Now they have to go straight to the Bank of Ghana for a punitive interest rate above the interbank rate. What are you now doing? It means that these banks are now basically working for Bank of Ghana. They are working to pay higher interest to Bank of Ghana. So any chance of profitability and turnaround is transferred from these banks to Bank of Ghana. So Bank of Ghana makes all the revenue. They are saddled with debt. And clearly these banks cannot survive. And so when you see a central bank governor and the bank itself, that is supposed to give comfort and assurance and handhold these banks to get out of the trouble, basically administering a solution that fast-track their death, then that is something that we must be very worried about.
So you have evidence to show that the GCB is struggling after taking over UT and Capital?
Listen, UT and Capital banks attracted their deposit at very high interest rate, we all know. They had to pay very high sums of money. I mean, very high interest rate in order to attract people to put their monies there. Ghana Commercial Bank doesn't pay those type of interest on deposits. So clearly, once you move them to UT, to Ghana GCB Bank, don't forget that when you move those deposits to them, you don't add monies to them. So if you were moving a deposit of 2 million and you had given me cash of 2 million to cover the deposit, there's no problem. But you are just giving me paper deposit of 2 million. So when the people now feel that the interest rate regime is not favorable to them, and they are coming for their money, whose money does GCB Bank use to pay? It is GCB Bank's own deposit that it has collected from people, that it spends 2.2 billion to fund those withdrawals of UT and Capital Bank customers. So what happens to those monies? So tell me which bank would squeeze out 2.2 billion to finance somebody else's deposits and still have the liquidity? And we do not know how much you have paid them. Have you paid that money back to them? It is not just about paying that money back to them, but whether the arrangements are such that they will make the bank stronger or weaker. We need all that information in the audited financial statement to make an informed opinion.
Do you suspect that that could be the reason that the financial statement is not being released?
I expect the Bank of Ghana governor to tell us the reasons they have given to them for delaying the release of the financials.
Is that the only bank that has not released its financials?
Clearly, as we speak today, there are about 6 banks, including Ghana Commercial Bank. I am worried about GCB Bank. Yeah, you keep remembering. You know, I'm the old school, don't worry.
I know.
the GCB Bank, I am worried because GCB Bank, when something happens to GCB Bank, the effect in the industry is big. The reason is simple. If this is a bank that could have 2.2 billion liquidity, that liquidity will not only be supporting GCB Bank, it will be supporting another bank that needs, let's say, 100 million overnight to deal with a liquidity challenge without going to Bank of Ghana. It will support another bank that needs just 50 million to support an overnight transaction without going to Bank of Ghana. That has dried out. So clearly, there is an industry-wide challenge when such a big player itself is now on the market looking for money. Okay, so I am much more worried. There are issues of NIB, which I know. The other banks, I don't want to mention them because I believe that those banks are already in very vulnerable positions, and I do not want to mention them.
In your letter, you also want the BOG to announce how much it is using to support GCB?
Yes, exactly, because GCB has been going for liquidity support. The bank that was rather giving liquidity support to its peers and even to Bank of Ghana is now cap in hands begging for liquidity. We need to know how much they have been able to give out to this bank. And so my challenge is that we need to be protecting the industry, and any decisions that we take in respect of a major player on the market should be informed by industry-wide impact of that decision and not just the one bank that we are dealing with, because GCB Bank is such a big bank that any adverse effects will have dire consequences for the industry. How
troubling is the lack of a board for ADB for the sector?
Okay, for a start, there are thresholds of approvals of transactions. Certain transactions we think that they are not so serious that the management can approve them. For some transactions, we believe that in order to ensure proper scrutiny and assurance, it has to go to the board for a proper decision to be made. And for some decisions, it has to go all the way to shareholders in either an annual general meeting or an extraordinary general meeting. These structures are put there to ensure that the corporate governance structures of the organization or the bank are solid enough to provide different layers of oversight. ADB doesn't have it technically. And so when it approves 10 million to McDan, how did it do it? Who takes responsibility? Who is assuring that these monies from third parties that are extended to another person are done within the confines of the rules and regulations of the bank and are compliant with existing laws within the industry? There are single obligor limit obligations that have to be fulfilled. All these are done at a certain level depending on the transaction involved. Now, Bank of Ghana, after 1 year, are still exposing third-party funds at ADB to this kind of challenge. And it is some of these corporate governance lapses that brought us to the point where we are. And to see that that is still happening, even after we have seen the consequences, is very... And yet they recently issued what they call corporate governance guidelines. And they can't respect their own basic tenets of just approving or disapproving a board in 3 months.
You have also tabled a motion, or you are yet to have a question admitted?
I asked a question on the floor, 2 questions on the floor. I realized there were no program for this week. I asked them last week. There were no program for this week. And these questions relate to some of the issues I have raised, but having realized that they haven't programmed it, and it might be programmed several weeks later. I don't want a situation where somebody will come to tell me, hey, but these things you are asking, why now? Because they are very urgent. And,
so and that is the reason receipt of your letter?
I haven't had any message from them, but I do believe that this is a body that is owned by Ghanaians, and I'm a representative of the people of Ghana, and I want to know what exactly is happening with our hen that lays the golden egg.
And the question you have in Parliament would be answered by who? The Minister for Finance?
Well,
or the BOG officer?
The Parliament would have directed it to the appropriate officer to come and answer, but the questions are very basic. What is the true total cost of resolving UT and Capital Bank? In other words, the takeover, how much has it cost us? I know 2.2 billion has just been paid to meet other outflows, but I also know that before then, some monies had been paid by the Bank of Ghana to support these banks. If those monies are not recovered, it means that we are heading towards something in the region of 4 billion. Now, this is very critical because some of these banks collapsed because government of Ghana was owing contractors to the tune of about 5.7 billion. Because these monies were not paid, in the case of Unibank, for instance, we are aware that close to almost about 120 or more was owed, which if you had paid, I mean, close to 800 million was owed on government-related exposures. If those monies had been paid to the contractors and Unibank had taken those monies, clearly you will not have the challenge of them going where they are. So if we are spending 4 billion for collapsed banks, whilst the 5.7 billion is still sitting there to be paid, then clearly there is a dysfunctional decision making, because at the end of the day, that is not an optimal decision to still spend 4 billion and they'll save these banks and we'll still have to pay the 5.7 at some point in time.
We have to go, but watching the social media space, you have been in the headlines. You apparently are also indebted to a bank somewhere, so you don't even have the locals to be making the statements you are making. Is that appropriate to say? Have you paid that money?
You want me to preempt? I don't own any bank.
Oh, you don't?
That is the honest truth.
Oh, I saw some information
yes,
on
but
social
it's not me. They just decided that one of the directors is me, and as a result, I'm the softer spot because I'm the one with a public image. And otherwise, I don't owe anybody.
By taking, well, whoever owes, is that person taking steps to pay? Do you know?
Well, that is not a conversation for me to have.
Thank you very much for being my guest on Point Blank. Honorable Isaac Adongo is the NDC MP for Bolgatanga Central and a member of the Finance Committee. Thank you for being on.
It's my pleasure, and thank you very much.
Well, that's by way of Eyewitness News tonight from our studios here at Adabraka in Accra. I am Umaru Sanda Amadu. Was here with Eugenia Tinkran. Production was led by Sixtus Dong Ulo with support from Marifans Fojo and Anas Seidu. Eyewitness News will be back tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. Indeed, there will be a rebroadcast at midnight tonight in case you miss any segment. Do enjoy the rest of our programs and have a good evening.